The champagne that killed me tasted of lies and cheap victory. One moment, I was raising a crystal flute, the light from the Michelin star restaurant's chandelier fracturing through the golden liquid. The next, a cold numbness crept up my limbs, my vision blurring at the edges. I saw the triumphant, loving smiles on the faces of my fiancé, Mark Foster, and my stepsister, Clara Hayes, begin to warp into something predatory and monstrous. "Feeling a little dizzy, Evelyn?" Clara asked, her voice dripping with mock concern. She delicately placed her own untouched glass on the table. I tried to speak, but my tongue was heavy, a useless weight in my mouth. My glass slipped from my nerveless fingers and shattered on the polished floor. Mark's handsome face, the face I had loved and trusted for 5 years, twisted into a sneer of utter contempt. "Don't fight it," he said, his voice a cold slap. "It's a fast-acting neurotoxin. Quite elegant, really. Painless, for the most part." My mind screamed, a silent, frantic shriek. Why? We were celebrating my success. My life's work, Project Chimera, a revolutionary cellular regeneration therapy, had just passed its final human trials. "Oh, but that's the thing, silly," Clara cooed, running a perfectly manicured finger down the stem of her glass. "It's not your success anymore. The patent was filed this morning. Under my name, Dr. Clara Hayes. Doesn't that have a lovely ring to it?" The room tilted violently. The patent, my name, but I had trusted Mark with all the paperwork. I had trusted him with everything. The Nobel Prize, the billions in profit, a place in medical history, "It's all ours," Mark said, leaning back in his chair, the picture of triumph. "And all it cost was you." Tears I couldn't shed burned behind my eyes. Through the encroaching darkness, one last desperate thought surfaced. My mother, my adoptive mother, Mrs. Hayes, who had been wasting away from the very disease Chimera was designed to cure. "Mother," I managed to rasp, the single word scraping my throat raw. "The cure for her." Claire let out a laugh, a sound so genuinely amused it was terrifying. She leaned in close, her sweet perfume filling my dying senses. "Oh, Mother. She was our final test subject. The cure works perfectly. She's been dead for a week. We had her cremated yesterday. We just forgot to tell you." The world fractured. It wasn't just my life's work they had stolen. It wasn't just my future. They had used my love for my mother as a weapon, turning my desperate hope into the instrument of her death. As my consciousness faded, my last sight on this earth was of Mark and Clara raising their glasses, toasting their new life over my collapsing body. Clara's final whisper was a poisoned dagger in my soul. "Don't look so sad, sister. An orphan's life is meant to be useful. This was your use." Then nothing but a cold, infinite blackness. Until ping. The sharp, cheerful sound of a computer notification ripped through the void. My eyes flew open with a violent, gasping breath. I wasn't on the cold floor of a restaurant. I was in my ergonomic chair, surrounded by the sterile white walls of my own lab. The phantom sensation of poison vanished, replaced by the low hum of my servers. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of terror and disbelief. On my computer screen, a freshly composed email glowed. To Mark Foster. Subject: "We did it. Project Chimera, final data attached." My eyes darted to the digital clock in the corner of the screen. 3:45 p.m. Then to the date. September the 17th. 3 years in the past. Mark was due to arrive in 15 minutes to collect the data, to collect the key that would unlock my own personal hell. Tears finally streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. The betrayal wasn't a memory. It was a fresh, bleeding wound. I didn't hesitate. My hand shot out, not to the mouse to delete the email, but to my keyboard. My fingers flew, accessing a secure hidden folder. Inside was a single file, a dossier I shouldn't have compiled for another 2 desperate years. A dossier on the one man in New York more powerful and ruthless than anyone. The only man who had the resources to fight a war for me. Alexander Sterling, the Ice King of Manhattan. In my past life, I had learned of his private, desperate search for a cure for his own rare genetic condition. I had learned too late of his secret attempts to contact me, all intercepted and blocked by Mark. I found the number. A private, direct line no one was supposed to have. My hand was steady as I dialed. It was answered on the first ring. A cold, powerful voice cut through the line. "Who is this?" I took a deep breath, the air of my second chance filling my lungs. My voice, when it came out, was a shard of ice. "Mr. Sterling, my name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. You don't know me yet, but in 5 minutes, your private physicians are going to inform you that your experimental treatment in Zurich has failed. In 10, you're going to receive an offer from me that will save your life." I paused, letting the impossible prediction hang in the dead silence. "Now," I commanded, my voice resonating with the authority of a queen returned from the grave. "Listen to my instructions." The silence on the other end of the line was so profound I could hear the blood roaring in my own ears. For a moment, I thought he had hung up. Then, the voice came again, stripped of its initial annoyance, now laced with a dangerous, calculating curiosity. "Speak." "I am the creator of a therapy that will cure your condition," I stated, no hint of doubt in my tone. "The final data is on my computer right now. It was about to be stolen from me. Instead, I'm going to give it to you." "People don't give me things, Dr. Reed," he replied, his voice a low growl. "They sell them for prices that could buy small countries." "I don't want your money," I shot back. "I want your power. I will give you the exclusive worldwide rights to my life's work. In exchange, you will become my sword. I need you to help me destroy a man named Mark Foster, a woman named Clara Hayes, and the company they hide behind, Hayes Pharmaceutical." Another beat of silence. I imagined him in his skyscraper office, a predator weighing the scent of blood in the air. "This sounds like a personal vendetta," he observed. "It's a declaration of war," I corrected him. "You'll get your cure, Mr. Sterling. I'll get my revenge. It's the cleanest deal you'll ever make. My address is on your screen now. Come alone. You have 30 minutes before my offer expires." I hung up before he could reply. My heart was still pounding, but a cold sense of control was settling over me. The weak, trusting Evelyn Reed had died on a restaurant floor. The woman sitting here now was a ghost, and ghosts have nothing left to fear. My lab door buzzed. A glance at the security feed showed Mark's smiling face. Right on time at 4:00 p.m. I pressed the intercom. "The door's open, Mark." He walked in, carrying a bouquet of my favorite lilies. "Evelyn, my brilliant girl. Ready to make history?" He leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head, and his lips met cold air. He frowned. "Everything okay?" "I've been thinking," I said, my voice flat as I swiveled in my chair to face him. "About the project. About us." "Good thoughts, I hope." he said with a strained laugh, placing the flowers on a nearby counter. "I've decided to accept a different offer," I said calmly. His smile vanished. "What offer? We're partners in this. I'm your partner." "No," I said, the words sharp and final. "You're a parasite, and I'm starting extermination today." His face paled, confusion warring with anger. "Evelyn, what the hell are you talking about? Did you send the data?" "The data is in much safer hands now," I said, just as the elevator to my private lab dinged. The door slid open to reveal Alexander Sterling. He was taller than I expected, with an imposing presence that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. His face was chiseled ice, but his eyes, a startlingly sharp gray, were fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. He was flanked by a severe-looking assistant. Mark stared, utterly dumbfounded. "Alexander Sterling? What is he doing here?" Alexander ignored him completely, his gaze locked with mine. "Dr. Reed, you've made quite an impression." He gave a slight nod to his assistant, who produced a sleek tablet and a stylus. "A simple contract," Alexander said, his voice resonating with power. "You grant Sterling Medical exclusive rights to Project Chimera. In return, my legal, security, and financial resources are at your complete disposal. Whatever you need to burn your enemies to the ground, you will have it." My hand was perfectly steady as I took the stylus and signed my name. The name of the woman they had killed. Mark finally found his voice sputtering with rage. "Evelyn, you can't do this. That research belongs to Hayes Pharmaceutical. It belongs to us." I stood up and walked over to him. I picked the lilies from the vase and held them out. "You're right," I said softly. "You should have these." When he reached for them, I let them drop to the floor and crush the delicate white petals under my heel. I looked up at him, my eyes burning with the memory of his betrayal. "That's for my mother," I whispered, so only he could hear. His blood ran cold. The color drained from his face as a sliver of primal fear entered his eyes. He didn't understand how I could know anything, but he saw the promise of retribution in my gaze. "Get out," Alexander commanded, his voice low and deadly. Mark, for all his arrogance, flinched like a dog that had been kicked. He cast one last venomous glare at me and stormed out of the lab. The room was silent for a moment. "Now," Alexander said, turning to me, his expression unreadable. "Tell me everything, Dr. Reed. I want to know exactly who we are going to war with." In the sterile, safe fortress of his penthouse apartment, complete with a state-of-the-art lab that dwarfed my old one, I told him. I left out the part about being reborn. He would think me insane. Instead, I framed it as a last-minute discovery of their plot. It was enough. He listened without interruption, his steepled fingers resting against his lips. The story of their theft, their lies, their plan to use my love for my adoptive mother against me hung in the air between us. When I was finished, he simply said, "They were sloppy, and they underestimated you. A fatal mistake." For the first time in 3 years, or a few hours, depending on how you looked at it, I felt a sliver of something other than rage. I felt safe. The contrast was dizzying. I had spent years seeking the approval of the Hayes family, living off emotional scraps, only to find absolute, unconditional support from the city's most feared man in a matter of hours. This was the first taste of sweet compensation, and it was intoxicating. The fallout was immediate. The next morning, Hayes Pharmaceuticals stock dipped on rumors of a critical research setback. By noon, Mark and Clara had launched their counterattack. A dozen sleazy tabloids and gossip blogs suddenly ran stories about the unstable, attention-seeking Dr. Evelyn Reed, the poor orphan the Hayes family had so generously taken in, who was now having a psychotic break and making wild accusations after being jilted by her fiancé. They painted me as a hysterical woman, a scorned lover trying to burn down the life of the man who left her. My adoptive parents, the ever-benevolent Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, even gave a tearful interview, pleading for their troubled daughter to come home and get the help she needed. In my past life, this would have destroyed me. Now, I watched the interviews on a massive screen in Alexander's penthouse, a cup of tea in my hand, and felt nothing but cold amusement. "They're trying to control the narrative," Alexander said, standing by the window overlooking Central Park. "It's a primitive but often effective tactic." "It's also predictable," I replied, setting my cup down. "They believe I'm still the same weak girl who flinches at a raised voice. They have no idea I have you." I turned to his assistant, Julian, a man of terrifying efficiency. "Julian, did you get what I asked for?" Julian nodded, tapping on his tablet. "The wire transfers, the offshore accounts Mark Foster set up, the audio files. It's all packaged and ready." "Good," I said. "Send it." That afternoon, Hayes Pharmaceutical called an emergency press conference to clear the air. Mark and Clara stood at the podium, the very picture of wronged innocence. "We love Evelyn dearly," Clara said, dabbing a tear from her eye with a tissue. "We are just heartbroken that she would spread such vicious lies about the company our father built and the man she claimed to love." Just as Mark stepped up to the microphone to deliver his sanctimonious speech, every reporter's phone in the room buzzed simultaneously. An anonymous, encrypted email had just been delivered to every major news outlet in the city. The subject line was simple: "The truth about Hayes Pharmaceutical." Inside was a treasure trove. Financial records showing Mark's embezzlement, funneling company money into his own secret accounts. And the main attraction? Audio files. After my rebirth, I had placed a call to both Mark and Clara, pretending to be confused and hurt. With my new, cold-blooded perspective, I expertly manipulated them into admitting the truth, all while a recording app was running silently. Their real voices now echoed from a dozen phones as reporters played the files. Mark laughing about how easy it was to fool me. Clara mocking my devotion to my dying mother and admitting the research was entirely mine. On the stage, the color drained from their faces. The reporters, who had been eating up their sob story moments before, turned on them like a pack of wolves. The room erupted into chaos. Flashes popped, questions were shouted. "Mr. Foster, did you embezzle millions?" "Ms. Hayes, did you steal Dr. Reed's patent?" "Is it true your mother is already dead?" From the back of the room, a new voice cut through the noise, calm and authoritative. "My client will not be answering any more questions." A path parted in the sea of reporters. My new lawyer, a shark in a $1,000 suit provided by Alexander, walked to the front. "However," he announced to the stunned crowd, "Dr. Evelyn Reed will be holding her own press conference tomorrow to announce her new partnership with Sterling Medical. She looks forward to sharing the real story of Project Chimera." The onlookers were floored. The smear campaign had not only failed, it had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. Mark and Claire were trapped on stage, their lies exposed to the world, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. Watching the live stream, I allowed myself a small, vicious smile. This was only the first cut. I was just getting started. The World Medical Innovation Symposium was the most prestigious event of the year, a gathering of Nobel laureates, research titans, and the investors who funded them. It was the perfect stage for my next move. Clara, in a desperate attempt to salvage her reputation, was still scheduled to present a minor project from her university days. Her goal was to project an image of a brilliant researcher unfazed by tabloid drama, a prodigy in her own right. She walked the red carpet in a stunning custom-made gown, a picture of defiant elegance. The entire hall was buzzing with the Hayes scandal, but the atmosphere shifted dramatically when the main doors opened. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Alexander Sterling, a man who hadn't attended a public event in 5 years and was rumored to be on his deathbed, walked in. He looked anything but ill. The gauntness was gone from his face, replaced by a healthy vitality. His presence was as commanding as ever, but the icy edge had softened, and on his arm was me. I wore a simple but exquisitely tailored black dress. I needed no sequins or bright colors. My very presence next to a revitalized Alexander Sterling was a statement more powerful than any couture gown. The onlookers were stunned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "Is that him? He looks healthy." And that's Evelyn Reed. The rumors must be true. Her cure works. The Hayes family is finished. We took our seats in the front row, directly in Clara's line of sight as she took the stage. Her composure faltered for a second as she saw us, her knuckles white where she gripped the podium. She stumbled through her presentation, the complex scientific jargon sounding hollow and rehearsed coming from her lips. The polite applause at the end was sparse. Then the host stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a surprise last-minute addition to our keynote speakers. She is a true visionary whose recent breakthrough promises to change the face of modern medicine. Please welcome Dr. Evelyn Reed." Another shockwave went through the audience. I walked onto the stage, the spotlight following me. I didn't even glance at the pathetic research Clara had just presented. "For the last 5 years," I began, my voice clear and steady, "I have dedicated my life to a single goal: reversing cellular decay. The project, codenamed Chimera, was born from a desire to save a loved one. But it became something more. It became a promise for millions." I clicked a remote, and the screen behind me lit up. Not with the data they had stolen, but with something new, something better. "What some of you may have heard about in the news was merely Phase 1, I announced. "Tonight, I am here to present Phase 2. For the next 20 minutes, I held the entire room captive. I detailed a breakthrough even more advanced than my original work, a targeted therapy that didn't just halt degeneration, but could actively restore damaged tissue to a youthful state. It was the kind of revolutionary science that happened once in a generation. When I finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a thunderous, roaring standing ovation. The greatest minds in medicine were on their feet, applauding me. I saw Clara in the wings, her face ashen, her body trembling. She hadn't just been discredited, she had been rendered utterly irrelevant. Later, she cornered me in a hallway near the exit, her beautiful face contorted with hate. "You snake! You ungrateful orphan! We gave you a home, a life. Everything you have is because of us." I looked at her, no longer seeing the sister I had once tried so desperately to please, but a petty thief. I smiled, a cold, sharp thing. "You gave me a cage and called it a home," I said, my voice low and dismissive. "I just decided to learn how to fly." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in her spectacular gown, a queen of a kingdom that had just been turned to ash. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of progress. Phase 2 of the Chimera treatment was working on Alexander even faster than I had anticipated. The constant, low-grade pain he had lived with his entire life was fading, and the strength was returning to his body. We spent long nights in the lab, working side by side, a comfortable silence often stretching between us, punctuated by moments of intense scientific debate. One night, as we analyzed a successful set of cell cultures, he looked at me, his usually guarded gray eyes filled with a vulnerability I had never seen before. "I had my lawyers investigate you, back when I first tried to acquire your research," he admitted, his voice quiet. "Mark Foster blocked every attempt. He told my people you were unstable, that your research was fraudulent. I almost believed him." "Why didn't you?" I asked, my heart skipping a beat. "Because my team also found records of your work from your university days. The brilliance was undeniable. And I felt a connection to your focus. The desperation. I know what it's like to fight a war against your own body." In that moment, the line between patient and doctor, between allies in a war of revenge, blurred into something else entirely. He reached out, his hand gently covering mine on the lab bench. His touch was warm, steady. A current passed between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of the strange, intense bond forged in betrayal and rebirth. Our moment was shattered by the screech of a smoke alarm and the sudden, violent crash of breaking glass from the outer lab. "Get down!" Alexander yelled, his body moving with a speed I didn't know he possessed. He threw himself in front of me, shielding me as a Molotov cocktail exploded against the reinforced window, sending a shower of fire across the floor. Men in black ski masks were smashing their way in. The Hayes family, financially ruined and publicly disgraced, had finally resorted to brute force. This wasn't just sabotage. They wanted the research destroyed and me dead. "The server room!" I yelled over the roar of the flames. "All my data is on a closed system." What followed was a terrifying blur. Alexander, using a heavy fire extinguisher as both a weapon and a shield, fought with a ferocity that was primal. He moved with the calculated deadliness of a man who had been trained for violence, protecting me at every turn. I, in turn, guided us through the lab's complex layout, using my knowledge of its chemical stores to create diversions. I remotely triggered a nitrogen gas release in one corridor, creating a non-lethal but disorienting fog. We were almost clear when one of the thugs lunged at me from behind a cabinet, a long knife flashing in his hand. Alexander shoved me out of the way, taking the brunt of the attack. The knife sliced deep into his arm. He grunted in pain but didn't falter, using the momentum to slam the attacker's head into a steel countertop with a sickening crunch. By the time his security team stormed the lab and subdued the remaining intruders, the fire was raging, and Alexander was leaning heavily against a wall, his sleeve soaked in blood. I rushed to his side, my hands shaking as I tore a strip from my lab coat to create a makeshift tourniquet. "You're hurt," I whispered, my voice choked with panic. He looked at me, his face pale but his eyes blazing with an intensity that stole my breath. "He was going to kill you," he said, as if that was the only explanation that mattered. "I wasn't going to let that happen." As I tightened the bandage, my fear for him was so sharp, so overwhelming, it eclipsed everything else. This was no longer a deal. This was no longer just about revenge. As the sprinklers rained down on us, washing away the smoke and soot, I knew I would burn down the world for him, just as he had willingly stepped through fire for me. The lab attack was the final nail in the Hayes family's coffin. The captured thugs confessed quickly, implicating Mark and Clara directly. But an arrest wasn't enough. I wanted total annihilation. I wanted to strip them of the one thing they valued more than anything, the illusion of their legacy. A week later, Alexander, his arm in a sleek black sling, called an emergency meeting with the board and remaining shareholders of Hayes Pharmaceutical. The company was on the brink of collapse, drowning in debt and scandal. He had a final offer for them. The boardroom was tense. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes looked aged and defeated. Clara was a nervous wreck, but Mark was still defiant, still clinging to a sliver of hope that he could talk his way out of this. Alexander began, his voice cutting through the tension like a razor. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Sterling Financial has acquired all of Hayes Pharmaceutical's outstanding debt. In layman's terms, he said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. I own you. A wave of shock and despair washed over the room. But I have no interest in running this company, he continued. I am merely here to facilitate a transfer of power. The boardroom doors opened. I walked in, not in a lab coat, but in a sharp, impeccably tailored power suit. All eyes turned to me. Mark shot to his feet. You have no right to be here. You're nothing but a thieving orphan. She's right where she belongs, a new voice said. My lawyer stepped forward, followed by a team carrying document boxes. And it's time you all learn the truth about the orphan you've exploited for the last 20 years. He presented the first document, a DNA test result, irrefutably proving my parentage. Evelyn Reed is not a charity case, my lawyer announced, his voice booming in the silent room. She is the sole heir and biological daughter of the late Dr. Alistair Reed, the brilliant founder of this company and the original architect of its foundational research. The room gasped. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes turned bone white. The lawyer continued, laying out the sordid history piece by piece. How the Hayeses, as Dr. Reed's junior lab assistants, had orchestrated his unfortunate lab accident after he created his will. How they had forged documents to adopt his infant daughter and seize control of his life's work, building their empire on a foundation of murder and lies. Project Chimera wasn't just my invention, it was the culmination of my father's legacy. A legacy they had stolen from me. I wasn't just the inventor they had wronged. I was the rightful queen of the kingdom they had usurped. This is insane. Lies, Mr. Hayes blustered, sweat beading on his forehead. Is it? I asked, my voice dangerously soft as I walked to the head of the table. Is it also a lie that you funneled the company's last remaining cash reserves into an account to pay for an attack on my lab? An attack you ordered? The final piece of evidence was played on the main screen, a crystal clear recording from a security camera Alexander had planted. It showed Mark and Clara in a heated, panicked argument, explicitly discussing the details of the hit they had ordered on me. Clara screamed. Mark collapsed back into his chair, utterly broken. Just then, the boardroom doors opened again. This time, it wasn't lawyers. It was the NYPD. Mark Foster, Clara Hayes, the lead detective said, his voice flat and final. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, and a list of financial crimes long enough to put you away for life. As they were handcuffed, a frantic Clara pointed a trembling finger at her parents. It was their idea. They told us to do it. They killed her father. The detectives didn't even blink. Don't worry, Miss Hayes. We're coming for them next. As Mark was led away, he looked at me, his eyes filled with a crazed, desperate hatred. You'll get nothing. The company is bankrupt. You've inherited a pile of ash. I leaned in close, my final words to him a whisper of ice and fire. "You're wrong. I've inherited my name, and I'm about to make it legendary." 3 months later, the name on the gleaming skyscraper wasn't Hayes, and it wasn't Sterling. It was Reed. I hadn't inherited a pile of ash. I had inherited a legacy. With Alexander's capital and my vision, we rebuilt the company from the ground up. Reed Medical became a beacon of innovation and ethics, a stark contrast to the corrupted shell it had been. Project Chimera was fast-tracked for public release, not as a tool for profit, but as a cure to be made accessible. The medical and business communities, which had once scorned the unstable orphan, now hailed me as a visionary, the phoenix of Wall Street. Former colleagues and acquaintances who had sided with the Hazies now sent fawning emails, desperate for a moment of my time. I deleted them all without a second thought. My past was a closed book. The villains of my story received their final judgment. Mark and Clara, facing overwhelming evidence, were sentenced to life in prison. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, charged with the decades-old murder of my father and a litany of fraud charges, would die behind bars. They were footnotes in a story that was now entirely mine. One crisp autumn evening, Alexander took me to the grand opening of the Dr. Alistair Reed Memorial Research Wing, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to pursuing cures for the world's worst diseases. He was no longer my patient or my ally in revenge. He was my partner in every sense of the word. His arm, now fully healed, rested possessively around my waist. We stood on a balcony overlooking the glittering New York skyline, the sounds of the celebration behind us fading into a pleasant hum. "I used to hate my illness," he said, his voice a low murmur against my hair. I saw it as a curse, a weakness that I had to hide from the world. But I was wrong. He turned me to face him, his gray eyes soft and serious. It wasn't a curse. It was a homing beacon. It led me to you, Evelyn. In another life, it almost doomed me because I couldn't get to you. In this one, it saved me. He reached into his pocket, but he didn't pull out a ring box. Instead, he produced a single, simple key. "This is the key to my penthouse," he said. "The one you've been staying in. I've had my name taken off the deed. It's yours now." I looked at him, confused. "Alexander, I won't be needing it," he continued, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Because I have no intention of ever living anywhere that you are not. My future began the day you called me. My life is with you." He paused, his gaze intense and unwavering. "Let's make it official." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, a declaration. My heart, which had been shattered and reborn in the fires of vengeance, felt overwhelmingly full. The last ghosts of my past finally vanished, replaced by the brilliant light of a future I had seized with my own two hands. "Yes," I whispered, tears of joy blurring the city lights. "Let's make it official." He slid his arms around me and kissed me, a kiss that wasn't about deals or revenge, but about a shared future reclaimed. In the heart of the city that had witnessed my death and rebirth, under the watchful eyes of the stars, I was finally home.